All right, screw it. Let's go with that. Because,
All right.
the note is Oklahoma's 10-2 in those alts, and they're 5-0 on the road. So, why are people pissed? Because they look crappy. That's why. They suck. I don't like them. I'm not prepared to say that they jinx anybody, but because the people that say they jinx you are the folks that remember Texas Tech and Landry Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's years ago. That's a different friggin' regime. Yeah, that's a different friggin' regime. You know what I mean? It's a decade ago. And that's,
Old man yells at cloud.
No, seriously, that's what it is. So I get that aspect of it, and I also get the aspect of people like me. It's like, no, they suck. I would rather that you just wear the whites. I
get it. I do think the road whites or the classics are the best look in all college football, but I do love OU when they do crimson from head to toe and they have the black socks and the black shoes, cleats. Oh my gosh, that's the cleanest look.
Give me a blackout uniform.
I want that too.
Give me a
I want that too. If you're
going
to do it, go hard.
Yeah.
But the problem is the donors, the old donors, they've been staunch against. The only reason why the old donors are okay to a sense with what they have now is because it's a combination of all the uniforms that OU has used throughout the years. And that's my beef as well. Like, people are like, well, you just stay with the classics. Okay, but what are the classics with Oklahoma? They look back how many times they've changed uniforms. Don't tell me it's classic. So it's a classic because they used them from 70 to, 2019? So that makes it a classic? It's a classic because it's in your lifetime. That's what they've used. Before your lifetime, they used like 20 other different uniforms. And nobody griped about it then. Why gripe now? And that's my beef. I know they don't look the best, but that's a different story. That's a whole nother subject. People are literally griping because they just don't like them. Why not just use the classics? I hate it. Stay traditional. Bama doesn't do it. Okay, Bama's the only team that doesn't do it. But Bama's also, outside of Oklahoma, probably has the oldest, most traditional, rich program. And those people definitely wouldn't go for an alternate uniform at all. But the rest of the country does. So what's the big deal? That's my deal.
No, I mean, I would support that. I think I think if you're going to have a classic uniform, stick to a classic uniform, but saying as you don't really have the years to say that you have a classic uniform, then just let everybody have it. Like, why not have an all crimson?
I love that look when they did it against Iowa. I know they lost, but that was an awesome look. I think that's everybody's favorite too when they did crimson from head to toe.
Yeah,
that's my favorite look with Bam when Nebraska did it in like the 80s. That was a nice look too. When they did it against Oklahoma at home, like 87, that's a clean look. I like that look. But that's my favorite look outside the classics. I do want an all black. I do want to see what Oklahoma looks like with a white helmet. I like the white alternate helmets that they have. I think those are really nice looking because they're basically just the old 50s helmets with just an OU on it. That's basically all it is. And then they have, if they did like all black with that, I think that'd be clean. But are they going to? Because kind of like the same color as the basketball unit. What color is that? Like some sort of gray, like smoky gray or smoky black or whatever. Like what color is that they use with the basketball when they do it?
Man, you got me.
You know what I'm talking about? But you've seen those uniforms. They're nice looking.
Yeah.
And if they use that same color on a football uniform, how mad would they be at Oklahoma if that happened?
Yeah. Who knows? But mad enough to pull their money? Probably not. As long as the team keeps winning. I
That's just it.
I think what it's going to have to take is Lincoln saying that he wants black uniforms. I mean, that's all it would take.
No doubt.
And apparently it ain't on his agenda. So that's where I come at it. On the field, right there, I've been playing this game of two questions, really. Well, three, I think. The first one is, if OU destroys Baylor, does that hurt?
I know where you're going.
Yeah, does that hurt him or help him?
That is a solid question because here's my thinking on this. You're going to have the faction of them saying, well, that's what they all thought of Baylor the whole time. They're 13th and they were 9-0 and yada yada yada. And so Oklahoma should have killed them. And now when they kill them, it just makes Baylor look like the fraud that they are. And then you'll have the other side going, well, Oklahoma looked really good on the road. against a team that was 9-0, and no matter what, they did win every game that they played. No matter how what fashion it ended in, they were on top every time the game ended. So you're going to have both those. It depends on what side the committee's on. That's going to be the problem. And if Oklahoma does that, say they kill Baylor, then they go out the next week and they kill TCU, and then they go out and they go to Stillwater and they win by say 14 to 17 points on the road in Stillwater against a top 20 Oklahoma State team. That's going to, and then Texas keeps winning. Then you go and you beat Texas, and they're fringe top 10, top whatever. They're the top 3-loss team. They're out in the country because that's what's going to happen if they went out, because they jumped from unranked to 19th after beating number 16 K-State. And then if K-State actually wins out from here on out and they're 9-3, that loss against K-State looks like the best loss in the country outside of Oregon's loss to Auburn. And then what do you do? Like, what do you do if you're the committee? That's going to be the question. We sit there and we the committee's playing with us. And we talked about this yesterday on my radio show. Everybody got in a big argument. They're playing with everybody. Like, they're getting everybody to watch. They're like, okay, now we're going to put another SEC team in there because you're going to continue to watch and see how mad you're going to get at the committee the next week. That's what's happening. And they take a snapshot of what it's like that week. That's all it is. So after all these teams play, what if Auburn beats Georgia? Like, what happens?
I'm rooting for it because Georgia still gets to the SEC championship game, but if they beat LSU, then we have real.
Oh, mayhem happens then. No. What do they do then?
Because I want 2-loss Georgia beating LSU, and I want Minnesota to run the table, so that you end up with 2 big teams and 2 SEC teams. And you know what? Add to it. Let Wake Forest beat Clemson, or let Clemson lose the ACC championship game.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, dude, nobody would watch the playoff if that happened.
I disagree.
I sure as hell wouldn't. I wouldn't care.
You're a liar.
Like, why would I care? Why would I care watching? I may watch the national title game, but I would not watch the semifinal. I would not care because what significance does it have?
Whether or not you care is not whether or not you watch it.
Here's my beef with all that is because are you doing it because you want 8? Is that why? Because you know it would get it to 8?
Hell yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get in the psyche of you.
No,
where you're going here.
Where I'm at with all of this.
Because it's so stupid how they're doing it right now. Like, I get it. People are like, well, they're making the case that Oklahoma didn't deserve it in some years. And then when you go back and look at how the rankings ended, you're like, oh, yeah, they did deserve it because they were the only 1-loss conference title team left, that the other teams had 2 losses. People tend to forget that.
Are you talking about last year?
Huh?
Talking about last year?
It doesn't. What year did they get in? The 17 was another year that there was an issue.
I mean, Ohio State had a conference championship and 1 loss.
2 losses in 17.
I'm talking about 18. I'm talking about 18.
They lost by 30.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, like, in my head,
that was but they deserved. Oklahoma deserved to get in because of that loss.
Well, no,
against a 500 team.
That's not my issue. That's not my issue, right? Because I would say that all things being equal, you need a committee to basically hammer out that you can't lose by 28 to Purdue, and you can lose by 3 to a ranked Texas team. Now, what I find interesting is if you look at, say, ESPN's FBI poll, or FBI, which is their Football Power Index predictive measure. Mm-hmm. If Baylor runs the table, they have a 58% chance to get into the playoff, which should be 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet still,
Oklahoma is only like 17 or something like that.
Well, I mean, be that as it may, Oklahoma took a loss, and in this sport, at this particular the way that we set it up, you can't take a loss,
mm-hmm.
and
That's
you're
true.
guaranteed at anything. But
because
if you're
you want
Baylor,
the season to mean something.
But if you're Baylor, you apparently can't even win every game and still be guaranteed to get in.
Well, here's my deal, and it goes in line with what you're saying right now. Is the way that the committee has it played out right now, might as well not even have played the season. I mean, seriously.
No, but because because I've been yelling about this all week. So
do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but I walked this out, right? I walked this out in a video, and I should probably I wrote about it, but I should probably write about it with an OU bent. It's SEC biased, but it's SEC bias around everything that we have, and we're responsible for it because the NFL draft took 64 SEC players out of 224. They took 10 alone from Alabama. They took 7 from A&M. They took 5 from Kentucky, and that's a basketball school, right? The Big 12 put 26 in, 8 of which came from one school, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah.
But if you look at the recruiting rankings, you'll see 9 of the top 25 in the 2016 class, right, this senior year, came from the SEC, and the ones that were also mentioned, Penn State had a top 25 class. Washington was number 29. Nebraska was 24. And yet we had people that ranked Nebraska in the AP and the coaches poll based on what? A 4-8 year? No, they based it on what they expected Scott Frost to do in year 2. So, like, we're not actually watching the games. We're doing this group think where we're just saying, no, the best players in the SEC, so that's who's going to be at this thing at the end. And we're looking at the Pac-12 and we're going, oh, yeah, Oregon had a top 25 recruiting class. And I mean, I'm not saying that people are doing that superficially. I'm saying that it's just everywhere. Like the SEC on CBS is having its best year since 1990 ever. Like that's 30 years that they, I mean, you know, and you're also talking about LSU Bama being the most watched game of the season. You know what the second most watched game of the season is?
OU Texas.
No, Georgia Notre Dame. You know, so like that's what I'm saying.
That makes sense because Notre Dame being such a national brand, yeah.
I'm saying we're all watching it, is what I'm saying, and they're watching it, and we're all responsible for 2 SEC teams getting in, and the one Big Ten team that people care about being the one that people think is the best, instead of Minnesota getting, you know, an equal shake here because they're 9-0 too, you know, and they're last time they were 8-0, they won a national championship, and Baylor. Hey, they ain't played nobody. Yes, but they haven't lost. You know, or that Appalachian State can get knocked out of the top 25 with a loss to Georgia Southern, but they can get in with a win against South Carolina. Yeah, I mean, or that 6-3 Oklahoma State is number 22.
You want to know why they did that though? But you want to know why they did that? Because it makes that Georgia loss doesn't look.
No,
as bad.
Again, I'm saying that we're all responsible, and if we got
I know, but I'm just agreeing with you with what you're saying. Like I'm seriously like that. The Appalachian State beat South Carolina, which we know they're going to be 4-8 to end the season. They're going to be 4-8 to end the season.
If we got an 18 playoff, I would expect to see 3 SEC teams, maybe 4, just because of the way things break down.
And that's just such a shame, like it is, because but then you go to these bowl games, and outside of the playoffs, because the top tier teams are really good in the SEC, but when you go to the bowl games. The Big 10 and the Big 12 dominate every year. Every year.
I don't know about dominate. Hold on. I want you to finish that thought.
Go look at the records. Go look at the records.
I want you to finish that thought, and let's take a break real quick. All right, B, your contention is that the Big 10 and the Big 12 are better conferences than the SEC because of bowl records?
Not better. Not better conferences. I'm just saying that we sit there and we say that, you know, the SEC is better. At the top, they are. They're probably better. They are better at the top. That discussion isn't really up to debate because the Big 12 has Texas and Oklahoma, you know, and that's if Texas decides to show up. The Big 10 has Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and that's about it because Wisconsin comes and goes. I mean, they're there, but they're not consistently ending in the top 10 each and every year. And that's my point. And so you have this where you're going to have multiple SEC teams finishing the top 5, top 10 every year. So at the top, they are better. But when you go and you look and you see the rest of the teams outside of the top 4 or 5 in the SEC, it's bad. Like, it is bad. They get beat.
I mean, I did this, right? So, like, they got the same amount of teams that with winning records as the ACC. And most people would say that the ACC sucks. Right.
Yeah, it's awful.
And the Big 12 has the same amount of teams with winning records as I think the Pac-12 and the Big 10. You know, so like that's with 4 fewer teams than the SEC or the ACC. So I mean, it's just it all depends on how you want to cut it up and how you want to shake it. But what we know is that the TV numbers predict who's going to get into these things.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why you can't rule Oklahoma out completely because, and I say they're not getting in And I'll say that still today, they're not getting in. As it sits, they're not getting in. But you can't rule them out if they went out and they beat all these top 15 teams that are going to be in the top 15, top 20 to end the season, because they're going to have all those. This committee's saying wins matter, right? Well, to an extent, it depends on who you are, obviously, because Alabama hasn't beaten anybody, Clemson hasn't beaten anybody, and they're still up there. But Georgia has, and they're number 4. Well, Oklahoma's about to be able to have 3, 4 top 15, top 20 wins.
Yeah, you're forecasting. You're forecasting, but I'm talking about what people have done right now.
Yeah, that's it. Right now, that's why Oklahoma is back.
So right
now, they're not getting in.
Right now, Minnesota and Baylor ought to be number 4 and number 5.
True. I would agree.
That's because I think the week-to-week thing matters, but I think it matters as far as the scoreboard goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I think both of those teams should be. That's how I had it. I had LSU, number 1, Ohio State, number 2. I had Minnesota, number 3. I had Baylor, number 4. I had Clemson, number 3, Baylor, number 4, or Minnesota, number 4, Baylor, number 5. That's how I had it. Sorry. And that's what I thought. And I thought, so then I had Oregon, then I had Alabama at number 7, and then so on and so forth. That's how I had it ranked, but my rankings don't matter, obviously. But, I mean, nobody's does but the committees.
All right, I want to talk about OU Baylor for just a second, because I feel like I have playoff fatigue already, like playoff rankings fatigue.
Yeah, me too.
The most intriguing thing I see is, can the 3-man front that Baylor runs get pressure on Jalen Hurts? And if they do, what kind of pressure? Because Bravion Roy at nose and James Lynch at end are loads. And Blake Lynch at linebacker is a dude. Yep. So depending on how they decide to employ their pressures, I think this could be an interesting game, because if they run the same sort of defense that they did against Oklahoma State to stop Spencer Sanders and Chuba Hubbard as best they could, at least, I think they can be successful.
Yeah, okay. So the other side of it is, I also think it's how Oklahoma contains Charlie Brewer, because he likes to run around and do his, Baker Mayfield, Houdini type stuff to get the ball out or run. And Oklahoma struggled against that against Brock Purdy. They struggle against that a lot. The only quarterback that they've really been successful was Sam Ehlinger. So I think they're going to have to get back to that. And I think the loss of JMT is big. And I've been saying that for the past 2 weeks. That's probably the biggest loss of the season for Oklahoma throughout the whole team, as far as injuries go. But to your point, on the other side, I think I agree with what you're saying as far as getting pressure on Hurts, because he does this, 1 read, 2 read, maybe a 3rd read quickly and then take off. They're going to have to figure out a way to counterbalance that, whether it's using Kennedy Brooks more, whether it's doing a lot of counters to slow him down a little bit, whether it's doing a lot of misdirections. Oklahoma's got to figure out a way to keep those 3 guys from being a problem as far as pressuring Jalen Hurts. And the way Oklahoma is to do that, Adrian Ealy's got to be healthy. Like, we've seen the downfall. When he's out, that offensive line is not very good.
No, I'll buy that. I also think that it's not very good because Tyrese Robinson has to flex out and do something he doesn't really do. And Bray Walker, as much as we want him to be there, just hasn't been there. But if Lincoln hands the ball to the tailbacks, I think it goes well. I think everything's fine.
I do too.
But
is he going to?
That is a very good question, and that's that.
He started out last game showing us he was going to, and then he just stopped. And somehow, some way, Kennedy Brooks ends up with
actually said, "I went away from what was working." He said those words.
So I expect him to stick to it this time.
I don't know, man. I think
it's hard, but it is. I mean, he used to do it. He used to just say, "All right, we're just going to run the ball down your throat." I don't know what happened.
Yeah, me too, man.
He's doing it, but he's doing it with the quarterback, because I think he thinks Jalen. Well, we all know Jalen Hurts is basically built like a running back, but you can only do that so far. And I know it gives you an extra man to block and all that stuff, but man, it becomes it's not as because you can't use a lot of the play action and stuff like that off of it. So it kind of loses the versatility of your offense when you do that because nobody thinks you're going to hand the ball off to the running back. I mean, there's no use of faking it, right? If you're not going to do it, who's
Eh,
going to fall for that?
yeah, well, I mean, maybe it's your read.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. Do you have any recruiting notes that you wanted to get to?
Um, I mean, I thought Steve Wilkbaum put up an interesting tidbit yesterday on Oklahoma's defensive line recruit. Alfred Collins, 4-star defensive lineman out of Bastrop, out of the Austin area. He kind of hedged a little bit, and that's kind of where I've been saying the past couple of weeks. Like it looks like it's Texas, but ooh, like Oklahoma is like creeping in there, and they have not relinquished their spot. And until he goes out and publicly says it's going to be Texas, everybody thinks Oklahoma has a chance, and it does. It looks like Oklahoma has a chance. And he even said, I won't be shocked. He goes, I'm going to keep Texas just because of the family stuff, but if he picks Oklahoma, I won't be shocked. And he said he wouldn't even mind missing on it. So I thought that was interesting, just how that's playing out, because you would think being a Texas legacy, it would be a done deal. But this kid really loves Oklahoma. So however it plays out, however this ends up, one way or the other, it's not going to be shocking either way. And it would be a massive get for Oklahoma if they were able to close that out.
Yeah, man. Do you have anything else you need to get to?
Nope, not at all.
All right. I think that's going to do it for this one. Dude, have a good show.
All right, man.
All right. I'll talk to you.
See you.